All right. We call our Waterworks and Lighting Commission meeting to order. First order of business is approval, additions, or corrections to the minutes of the following meetings. The regular commission meeting held on April 11th, 2018.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Joe made the motion.
I'll second.
John?
Yes.
We need to first to John. Thank you.
John squared it.
John Harper, second. Any other discussion? If not, all in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? Okay, the next one is special commission meeting held on April 24th, 2018.
I'll move to approve the minutes for the April 24th special commission meeting as written.
I'll second that.
Okay, John Harper made the motion and John Bergen second. Is there any other discussion, any corrections? If not, all in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right. Okay, action items, 2017 audit report.
Everyone should have a hard copy in front of them. John Troutman, he's a shareholder with Schenck. A lot of you probably remember him from last year. He's been in charge of our audit for the last 8 years, and he's just here to do a quick review of the financial statements and answer any questions you might have. So with that, I'll turn it over to him.
Good. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Really, the goal of this meeting, as in past years, is really just an informal discussion, just an informal summary of your audit for 2017. And we really do that by going through two documents. You have two documents in front of you. The main annual financial report is the bound copy of your financial statements with the audit report attached to that. And then inside either the front cover or the back cover, there's a stapled document, which is the management communication letter. And we'll start in the annual financial report, and I'll go through a few things in there, and then we'll switch gears to that stapled document and conclude there. So again, just to go through kind of the results is on page 1 through 3 of the annual financial report. That is the independent auditor's report, so that's essentially what we attach to your financial statements and issue our opinion. So again, I won't read it to you, but basically it states that we've audited your accompanying financial statements of the electric utility and water utility as of December 31st, 2017. And then in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the electric utility and water utility of the Commission as of December 31, 2017. So that's what's considered a clean opinion, an unmodified opinion, and that's exactly what you want for an external audit because we did not have to make any modifications to that. So great news, and again, that's a testament to how clean your records are, how few journal entries we make. Things are in excellent shape from the financial side. So we certainly appreciate that. It helps us do our job better and issue that audit in a timely fashion. So thank you again.
Question
Thank you, Jeff.
on page 1.
Yes.
Where you can see it's the third paragraph at the end. Not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the Commission's internal control.
Correct.
So do you have an issue with internal control?
No, I'll get to that a little bit in the management communication letter. We spelled that out a little bit in more detail. But what that's referring to is we issue an opinion on your financial statements. That's what in general audits do, external audits. We do not issue an opinion on internal control processes. We look at them, we test them, and that's in detail on the second page of the management communication letter of what we do. But we do not issue an opinion. That's all that's saying. It's not saying there's issues with your internal control. It's not saying that there is or isn't. It's just making a comment that it's not an opinion situation. But if you want to flip to that, since we're talking about it, it might be more logical. If you want to turn to page 2 of the stapled version, I think it's in the back cover of that, really goes through, the top of there goes through our consideration of internal control was for the limited purpose described in paragraph on page 1. And what that's really referring to is, in order to issue our opinion on your financial statements, we have to have a very, very good understanding of your internal control, and we have to have a very, very good documentation of how it all works. Because without that, the opinion couldn't happen. However, we don't bridge that gap and issue an opinion on that. In order to do that, just for clarity, we would have to do a much more in-depth and much higher scope as far as following individuals around and making sure that what they're keying in is actually happening and there's no override and stuff like that. But any major issues with your internal control, if there were any, would be listed on page 2 of the management communication letter. And we did not identify, on the second paragraph of page 2, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting that we considered to be material weakness.
Were there particular areas that you sampled?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A number of areas, yes.
And did you identify those for us?
In a list of what we sampled, no. That's beyond the scope of a report like this, because it would get very lengthy. I can tell you we, as far as an audit in general, we identify all the key controls, and we also identify all the key risk areas. So some of that's based on size and materiality. You've heard that term a lot throughout this report and in audits in general. But it's not 100% size, because all audits now follow the risk-based approach. So something could be relatively small but high risk. So we tend to treat cash like that, where cash transactions could be small, but they're also high risk. So we test those very heavily based on risk. Same with inventory. Inventory is another big item that we come and test at certain times of the year. So.
But in the appendix, you do, or Jeff has, outlined all of the records and materials provided.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
You bet. Flipping back to the annual financial report, beyond the opinion, we turn to page 4 and 5. It's on 2 different pages, but that's really your statement of net position. So statement of net position is effectively listing all of your assets, your liabilities, including your deferred outflows and inflows, and then ultimately your net position, where you ended the year as far as the utility, the commission. So you have your assets on page 4 and deferred outflows, and I won't list every one of those, but the majority of your assets are in other assets or your investment in ATC, and also you have some non-current assets in depreciation fund and restricted cash investments of $5,760,000, And so total assets, $53,155,000 for the electric utility and $35,034,000 for the water utility, bringing total assets for the commission of $88,189,000. You have a deferred outflow of resources, again, kind of a hybrid asset per se. It's different than an asset, but still similar in nature in the accounting world. And that totals $2,269,000. Tied, both numbers there are deferred charge on refunding, and then the pension-related amounts is a deferred outflow. If you switch to page 5, it shows then your liabilities offsetting those assets. And you have current liabilities in the electric utility, $4,416,000, and $1,636,000 in the water utility. Those are your traditional current liabilities, accounts payable, accrued payroll, due to the city is in there as well, and then some other liabilities as well. Then you have your long-term liabilities. So you have $6,096,000 in general obligation debt, all in the electric utility. And then again, you have another category there of net pension liability. So you'll see that pension really 3 times. One on page 4 in the deferred outflows. The main liability on page 5, $131,000 for electric, $65,000 for water. And then you'll notice it again right above the net position, pension-related amounts deferred inflows, $412,000 and $210,000. All 3 of those really are a product of your net pension reporting. And again, if you're here in previous years, I spent some time talking about that a little bit. And those are ongoing, and they'll be continued ongoing. The liability itself on the middle of page 5 there, the $131,065, that's the true liability that exists as of December 31, 2017. The other amounts are really the catch-up. And the confusing part of this is, and as a reminder, this is the investment in the Wisconsin retirement system that you have. So what they do is at the end of the year, the state issues their audit, and they have an actuary look at the Wisconsin retirement system pension plan for all participants, you being one of many governments in there. And they take a look at that and they say, okay, here's all of our investments at the state level, here's what you're investing your money in, and here's all of our participants' plans. And they add that up and they compare. And as of a point in time, you have either an asset, which you had a few years ago, or you have a liability, which is a fairly small liability considering your participation in there. I think roughly it's about 98% or so funded. So that means there's a slight liability, but pretty much you're right on the money as far as participants' data compared to what they have. Other states are not in that position. I can tell you that if every state was in the position of Wisconsin, this accounting standard would have never taken place. This accounting standard is what, 3 years old now? It would never have been made by Washington, by the federal government, because most states are in a position where there's a pretty big liability there, where you add up everything and there's not enough investments at the pooled level, the state level, if it's a state run. So again, that's a good news for Wisconsin participants, is you're right there. And I always like to point out, because it kind of seems like we're going up and down, which is a little bit confusing, especially to readers of your financial statements, but if, again, we're in year 3, if you expand this out to like a 10-year timeline, we're on a straight line. We're a straight line right near that funded level. So that's good news. So that's what we want. If that starts to track down, obviously, then you'd watch that and you'd know that a little bit very quickly on your financial statements.
Between you and Jeff, there was just an article in the Journal today about pension systems and how what the average pension system is projecting like 7.5% returns, and they're averaging like, at least 1% below that. I don't know where Wisconsin is in that.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know either, but it isn't bad. I mean, Wisconsin is one of the lucky few. I mean, we're talking like a handful, like under 5 states that are in a position like this. So again, that's good news. That's good news for our participants.
Whereas, we were talking about the pension-related amounts, and between the two, it's $623,000. And is this money that's already in the state of Wisconsin, or is this future payments for us to the Wisconsin pension system?
What this is simply the difference between what you have as participant data. So if you add up all your employees of what they have in the pension and comparing that to the investment results of the state of Wisconsin under the Wisconsin Retirement System Pension Plan. And that's what it's compared, that's what's recorded on your book. The reason why it's split between 3 is it's a year behind. So we can't wait to value this based on the 17 data from the state, because we will not have that till September. So we couldn't issue this audit then until September or later. So we have to use the year before, and the standards allow for that. We have to use 16s. And the difference between a number of things, the catch-up between the investments. So there's a difference between the valuation date of 16 and the actual investments of 17 for the state, and that can fluctuate significantly. That's tied into those big numbers. And then it's amortized. So those numbers don't just drop off. They start to work their way down. It's a little bit confusing. It's certainly not probably the clearest the GASB could have made it. But again, it makes much more sense on states that are only 40-50% funded. Then you have a huge liability there because it's a real liability. That's all this is. It doesn't mean that it's money tied anywhere. It's simply a reporting as of December 31/17. That's really it. Yeah.
I know this seems to be a deja vu moment for me. Last year, I think I asked the question. It's in most pension plans, you go into an outside entity and they're investing the money for your employees and for yourself, of course. And once it goes, I would think it goes. It's into that pension plan. And, then they'll have us have to report it on our liabilities. It's,
Yeah.
I guess it just doesn't trigger the right button on my head.
To some extent, it's true. I mean, you give the money to the state and they invest it, it's there. There's nothing really real about that. What this really is simply bringing on that liability, because GASB studied it, and there's such a difference of some of the underfunded states that it wasn't accurate not to put that in there. And a lot of the participants, as a whole, didn't even realize that they're sitting where everybody retired all at once, which isn't obviously logical, but if everyone did, there would be enough money in that state to pay out, which is obviously troubling for those states. So,
Sure.
Good questions. And that really leads on page 5 to the net position. So really the end of the year, the electric utility had $43,408,000 in net position. And again, you can see the components of that. 27 million of that 43 million are tied into your net investments and capital assets. So that's your electric utility capital assets. The remaining 15,644,000 is really your carryover into this fiscal year we're in now, 2018. So likewise for the water, $33,235,000 in net position. 28,000 of that is tied up in your water utility assets. 4,537,000 is unrestricted, carried over into 18. Again, so you can see the totals there, very similar to last year. It stayed pretty steady, especially the unrestricted went from 20,115,000 in 16 to 20,182,000. Instead of going through page 6, which is your operating, so we talked about how you carried that over, or what you're carrying over, how you ended the year. Let's flip over to the management communication letter, which is, again, that stapled document. And turn to page 4. It gives us a little more detail, a little bit easier to go through the operating results of each entity of electric and water. You can kind of see there, page 4 is your electric utility, so we start out with the electric utility. And I won't read every single category here, but the bottom line is the operating income for the year 2017 on the bottom there is $1,983,000 compared to $2,721,000 in 16. And we can see the key components of that. For operating revenue, $26,783,000 compared to $28,350,000 in 16. Again, the big factor there is your sales of electricity went down about 5%, $26,411,000 down from $27,974,000. And then if you compare the expense side, expenses also went down about 3%, $24,799,000 compared to $25,628,000. So again, the key components there, that bottom graph kind of shows the split between your revenues and your electric charges for services, blue being the residential, your largest component. The general service, it makes up a little more than half, and then your other half of categories are listed there. Switching gears on page 5 to the water utility operating results, you can see the operating income for 2017 for water, $1,152,000, down from $1,583,000 a year ago. We can see, if we focus in a little bit, you can see the operating revenues, total sales of water went up a little bit greater than 2%, $4,806,000 compared to $4,718,000 in 16, bringing total operating revenues just short of $5 million. $4,983,000, up from $4,898,000 in 16. Compare that to water operating expenses, up about 15% in the water, $3,831,000, up from $3,315,000. So you can kind of see the majority of the increases in your operation and maintenance. So that's the cost to supply water. Bottom of page 5, again, splits out the revenues just as a discussion item there. You can kind of compare from year to year on how that shakes out. Residential and commercial being half. Industrial added to that is almost 75% or 60, 70% of your revenues for charges for services.
And that the big change there is water treatment costs are up pretty dramatically.
The big increase was that's where the filter plant repairs.
So those were
Expense. Right, correct, because they were just repairing
Yeah.
cracks in there.
Right,
Exactly.
okay.
Page 6 talks about, it carries that conversation really over to a rate of return. So again, when we talk about operating results in utilities, it really mirrors business, the business type, the business world, the business type activities in governmental accounting. So really the best way to discuss the performance during the year is really the rate of return. And rate of return is designed to pay annual cost of debt and provide return on the investment in both utilities. Typically, the PSC authorizes rates of return between 5 and 8%. Again, that number is going down quite a bit from the PSC. We're working on some rate cases in the water side that now they're really recommending no higher than 4 or 4.5%. So that number is significantly down from the state level compared to 5-6 years ago, where we were up into the 8 to 10 range in some cases. So keep that in mind. Your authorized rate of return on the bottom line there of this chart, there's a comparison, electric, water, and then a comparison by each year there. Is 5.75 for electric and 6% for water. So that's what the PSC has established, and you've established with the PSC, Public Service Commission, for both entities. Your actual rate of return is the line above that. So for 2017, the electric rate of return is 4.28. So you can see a pretty big drop there from 7.27 to 4.28. There's a couple reasons, a couple, I guess, points there. 7.27 and 16 is pretty high. So if you had 15 there, you kind of see it's like a bubble there. 4.28 is a little bit lower than 5.75, but that's not alarming at this point, at least from my perspective, because it's pretty close to the 5. That does fluctuate. The majority of the categories there, the effect on that is above that. You can see the operating income went down $1,983,000 as compared to $2,721,000, and then right above that, your average rate base went up. So when you have that in the numerator and denominator, it plays into the decrease. But again, you're in that PSC range of 4 to 4.5%. So that is where you want to be for electric. Now, water utility, it dropped to about 2.09 as compared to 4. And again, a little bit lower operating income is the main result of that, and once again, a little bit higher average rate base up on top. And you can see the calculations there, how each one of those are calculated. But again, monitor the rate of return. That does fluctuate from year to year based on different things. Obviously, you have that maintenance item in there, which is a big hit on the rate of return. So knowing that, you're not too concerned with that unless it stays down at that level or continues to lower. But certainly, Jeff has a handle on that, and you have a handle on monitoring that. So, any questions on rate of return? Next page just kind of shows a graph of that over time, over the 5-year period, so you can see how that is tracking on both electric and water. Page 8 switches gears just to a new accounting standard coming up. I just want to kind of alert you to that. Fairly technical. I won't spend a lot of time going through the details, but it is Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB, statement number 87. This is effective for fiscal years beginning after December 15th, 2019. So this will be for a few years out yet. But we're letting you know just the bottom line. This is related to leases. So a little bit of a difference. You already have some recording leases when they qualify as a capital lease. This is just changing the rules, the reporting rules. There'll be some additional footnote data in there. Under the new guidance, a lease asset and a lease liability are recorded in the financial statements for really any kind of contract where to use another entity's equipment, building, or other non-financial assets for a specific period of time. So all they're doing is they're going back to the definition of leases, the accounting definition of leases, and they're tweaking it to really include almost all leases is really what that means. Rental or maintenance type things most likely won't be included, but anytime you finance equipment through leases, you're going to have to put an asset and liability on the books for that. That's not that big of a change, but there will be some additional footnote disclosures. You're going to have to really calculate the lease fixed payments, variable payments, interest rates, purchase options. So you're going to have a little bit more detail in your financial statements, all in the attempt to make the financial statements more transparent. Again, really to give that user of your financial statements all the data that they need, assuming that they are looking at that and they are interested in that. The second paragraph there is really the biggest change, and that is where now it's when you lease equipment and items to another entity, and where you're the one leasing the equipment out, there is now going to be a lease receivable and a deferred inflow of resources related to the lease receivable recorded. And again, the lease receivable is calculated similar to the lease asset in the where you're leasing something, and the lease receivable is discounted and amortized over the life of the term. So there's some complicated equations that'll have to go into this. It's not going to be that bad. I'm not sure if you lease anything out, fairly uncommon in your situation, but in governments in general, it does happen. So we'll let you know about that. And then again, bottom line is, we've got a couple of years, and we're here to help you with that if some of this stuff doesn't apply. So.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would that be like with our software? Are we leasing through?
Most of our software are annual licenses, or just, maintenance. It'd be more of our copiers and mail machine and those kind of things would be our equipment that we're leasing right now.
And the other thing, like often businesses will lease, like let's say a fork truck with a 4-year lease with $1 buyback.
Right.
Is that one of the reasons that they're trying to find out what's? Because you'd expense that, in a business rather than a capital purchase.
I don't know the reasons, I guess, why they did this at the federal level. I'm guessing the reason why they did it is leases are becoming more popular. And that situation always would have been recorded, so there's not a whole lot of difference there. When you have a buyback, when you own it at the end of the lease, it's a capital lease, you would have recorded it in the past. This is simply making sure that all leases are captured, because what's happening is leasing companies are getting fairly creative in some of the financing here, because this is what we're really talking about, is financing. Anytime you finance equipment through a lease, it's got to be on your books, and that's really the intent of this. I think that's the reason why. I think there's some fairly complicated lease agreements starting to show up, and it's getting more and more common that governments are using these. And even school districts leasing, whole fleet of buses and stuff like that is becoming very, very common. And they want to make sure that nothing is avoiding being on the financial statements. That's it. Which makes sense, actually. Mm-hmm. The rest of the document is the manager rep letter, which concluded the audit, and that's all of your representations. That's where you list everything that you've given us to audit and all the records and so forth. So I won't read that to you. But that really concludes what I wanted to go through, but I'd open it up to any questions or anything else you want to go through. Be happy to talk about.
What would the implications of leasing be on pilot before and after this change?
Payment in lieu of taxes? None to my knowledge, because that is a payment that's regulated, and unless the PSC decides to change
But
that.
isn't that based upon assets?
It's based on utility plant assets. So, yeah, I guess it could have an effect, but again, it would have an effect already. So again, very, very few in my mind, when you apply this standard, very, very few differences between what's now happening and what's recorded now. So if you lease a piece of equipment, it's already going to be in your assets now. So the copiers and so forth, very, very limited change, other than the fact that when you lease to other people, that's where that's going to be a receivable, and that will not affect the pilot. So it will affect it, but I don't see it in practice affecting you unless you have one of these very complicated, unusual lease agreements that now it would not be in equipment, and after GASB 87 it would be, and it would have an effect, yes. But I don't think you really enter into anything that unusual. Not to say you won't in the future, but certainly not right now.
You can see from the rate of return, as we had talked earlier, we're likely to file a water rate increase sometime by the end of the year.
But we might not have to, if we back out the expense impact of that, I don't know how it's tracking this year yet.
Well, yeah, we can see, we're getting low when they're authorized, it's up around 7 or 8 on the water side. Well, the PSC has drastically reduced the rate of return in the last few years, yeah, you can see by ours.
And when does that
On the
happen?
electric side, what?
Does that happen automatically, or is that when you go for a rate increase?
They base it upon a bond rate and where it's at.
It's when you go into a rate increase.
When you go in. yeah.
Okay, all right, so, okay.
Yeah, so it'll stay the way it is until we go in for another one.
Right, that's when it'll be reviewed or something.
Because they'll base the rates that they set there based on that rate of return.
Okay.
So they won't adjust it anytime now.
Yeah, it's been tracking, I've seen it high as 5, as recent as a few months ago. The one I just worked on, which got released this week, was 4.5. So they dropped it a little bit more. Now, that's not to say they will do that for everyone. They make every case-by-case basis. But to get more than that, to get to 6, it would take some pretty good lobbying, and I don't see that happening right now in today's, where their stance is today.
Although if interest rates continuing to tick up, they've got to change that tune eventually.
Yep, exactly.
Anything else on the audit?
On page, I guess this is more of a question for Jeff than anything else. For the uncollectible accounts, $573,639. It seems higher than what we've talked about.
What that represents everything we've written off that's considered still uncollectible.
Over a period of
10 years.
10
or
years.
whatever it is. So I mean, that's the accumulation of everything that we still can collect on. So as long as, if they make a payment on that, it has to be inactive for 7 years before it's considered uncollectible, or that we can no longer collect on it. So if they make a payment, that clock starts over, and now it's 7 years past that. So that number represents all the write-offs we've done that are still within that window.
Okay. The other question I had also on page 10 is the ATC is private. So you have this question about valuation. Is it reasonable from your perspective, the valuation that we do have for ATC? Do you have any insight into that?
Well, again, we definitely apply audit procedures to that, compare reasonability, and yes, we do feel it is reasonable. Yeah.
Most of that's garnered from direct reporting from ATC, correct?
Exactly.
ATC is the one crunching the numbers.
Yep.
So what they're carrying on their book value would be similar to what we've invested.
Correct.
For our portion, our ownership.
For your portion, correct.
All right.
Is that a stock ownership?
Correct.
I never caught this before. Wood County telephone stock.
We do have a very small amount of Wood County Telephone Company stock, yes.
That was here before we all arrived.
All of us.
Yeah.
I found that very interesting.
Yeah, we used to get their proxy statement once every year, that's
Yeah.
about it.
Did we get a return on the
I
investment?
think we get about $100 a year on that, so.
100, huh? Oh dear.
And I even tried to track down why that was bought and when, and I just couldn't, the records weren't as such I could track it down. So. Though we own it.
Okay. Do we know what the impact, this is page 15, for mortgage-backed securities, do we know what the impact of current interest rate changes are going to have on, I assume these are bond holdings that as interest rate goes up, the value of the bonds goes down? How much do we have at risk here?
These you're talking about are callable notes up on the top there, or is that what you're?
The mortgage-backed securities, at the bottom of the page.
You know, those we're going to hold to maturity, so even if the market value goes down, we're going to hold them to maturity, and then we're going to collect our amount that we invested anyway. So we have no intention to sell them, and since the rate's going up, they're not going to call them, so we should be fine on those.
Okay.
Why it's disclosed in here is simply to point out, because remember, this report is as of a point in time. But again, when clients and management is, the intent is to hold to maturity, it becomes almost like a reporting only issue. Still important, obviously, but you know, if you're going to hold to maturity, it doesn't necessarily matter that much.
Right. If we never get in a position where we had to pull it out early, we're in great shape.
Yep.
Okay. I think those were all my questions.
Thank you, John.
Very good. Thank you.
We do need
Motion to accept. So moved.
Okay, John Bergen made a motion to approve the 2017 audit
I'll second that.
and seconded. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? Okay, the motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
That's why your cable rates are so high.
Yeah, that's what I want to use that.
I have an extra vacation indoors. Or insomnia.
All right, now we, 3.2, replacement of trouble.
So just a question, the different model numbers, I'm assuming that those are just representative of the vendor, right? The V model is the VersaLift and the A model is the Altec, and that it's not substantially different?
Correct. They're both very similar capacity trucks,
Yeah.
heights and all that.
Yeah, that's their model number, it's not the
Correct.
the Ford's
Not
model
our
number.
spec
Yeah,
or
okay.
Ford's spec, correct.
Is this the total cost of the purchase?
Yes, sir.
So we don't have any other thing that we have to do once we get this truck that falls into the costs that we're going to incur?
Other than if the crew puts anything in for hand tools or supplies. Other than that, it's a turnkey unit ready to hit the road.
Any idea why the big difference?
Josh and I have been scratching our heads since we got this quote. We were ready to pull a trigger with your approval in January or February, but we kept going back and forth with these two vendors. We just assume Altec wants their business bad.
We haven't bought, that's why I think it is as well, we haven't bought a truck from Altec in years. I mean, we bought a back lot line machine several years, but that's been what, 5, 6, 7 years ago. 7 years probably. So I think they just want to get some business back. VersaLift has beat them out the last several vehicles. So.
Is it, can I assume these are both 2018 models?
Actually 2019.
Okay.
Before we get it. Before we get it, it'll be 19.
Yeah, but I didn't know if somebody it's a 2017 or something.
In the F-650 and Ford's medium duty lines, their production dates, I believe, change in March.
Oh, okay.
So they're already building 2019s. And that's been that way for, well, as long as I've bought vehicles. These both are dual, what we call dual rated trucks, and it was something that Josh wanted to consider. These trucks can either be run with or without an outrigger. That could improve efficiency for, say, changing a street light. When you get way out with that bucket, way out far reach, then the outriggers would go down. But there's ballast added to these trucks and a special suspension to be able to handle that. So it's, I guess it was real popular years back, and it's kind of coming back around.
Yeah, you don't have to get out in traffic and screw around with outriggers all the time. It's a lot safer.
I move for approval.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, John Bergen made the motion. Joe seconded it. I have a question.
John
Bergen.
John Bergen, I said, didn't you?
No,
I did.
Oh, John, the other John second, I'm sorry.
Just trying to confuse you.
I think you guys ought to separate.
One of us is going to have to become Jack.
Yeah. What year truck are you replacing with this?
We're gonna visit that when this new truck comes in. We either have a 2006, the 7.8 is a 2006, or a 2011. The 2011 has exceeded the 2006 truck in miles and hours. Condition-wise, they're similar. We will also talk with that vendor who supplies our truck with trade-in value. This price does not include trade, and both companies were very interested in trades.
I take it the hydraulic system is probably takes the bulk of the maintenance hit.
And
this truck.
we're going with a gasoline engine on this truck.
Sure.
Industry-wide, utility companies, construction companies, the diesel engine has just been ruined by the government, just with emissions and all that. And just for example, the current Treble truck has about 92,000 miles on it and 8,800 hours. We're getting a little nervous on that.
And that's the 2011?
Correct.
So one of those two, probably whichever one gets the highest trade-in value or from a maintenance perspective is going to create the most problems for Jason.
There's another one that comes back from my perspective is, what are the maintenance costs on each of the units? And to me, that's a very important criteria that we should be tracking.
We've got a little scorecard, score sheet that we track as we go through the vehicle replacement.
Okay.
Maybe we all have biases when it comes to vehicles and how old they are, and which one should go and which one shouldn't, and when should we buy something. So we're using our head rather than math. Are there any other questions? If not, all in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? Okay, motion passed. Okay, department update, safety committee. Looks like we didn't have a safety meeting this month.
Right.
tonight. We have a bunch of other things going on, activities that kind of got pushed aside, never got back to it.
We were redoing the valve and the filter plant, it was consuming a lot of time. Wanted to make sure we got it done while the contractor was still here.
All right, line superintendent's report.
Squirrels came back to life.
The vehicle accidents, was that the snowstorm?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I think there were a couple snowstorms, actually.
Yeah, well, right, snowstorm, yeah.
There was a couple pieces, the city had fallen snow too, so all snow related, I would say.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else to ask of John? If not, the water department operations.
Were these valve upgrades that we talked about here?
Yeah, then when the filter plant, we had filters 1 and 3 had valves that were not operating properly anymore, and we could not find any parts to fix it, so we had those replaced. We replaced them in-house. The valves that we have the contractor do is in the pipe galley. It's a separate area for the newer filters. They're a lot bigger. I mean, they're 18 and 20-inch pipes, so more than we can handle. Them are now replaced also. So, but these particular ones are just on filters 1 and 3 that we changed in-house, and they're now up and operational again. So.
On this last item, flushing dead mains to maintain chlorine residuals.
We have areas in town where the main is a dead end, obviously, and people live on it, and you don't use enough water to keep fresh coming in, so twice a year we flush those dead ends to bring fresh water into those areas so people don't have concerns or complaints about water quality.
Is there actually, though, a lack of chlorine?
Over time, chlorine dissipates, so it gets to the lower end of where we want it. So that's why we introduce new water into it to raise those chlorine residuals to avoid any complications down the road.
But have you actually tested and know that there's no chlorine reaching the homeowner?
We can take tests. We usually take a random here and there. We like to keep it at 1 point going out of here and in the system between 0.5 and 1. So when it gets down on the lower end of it, when we do our sampling, we see we got to flush the main to bring that back up again. So.
And the DNR requires flushing of hydrants as well, not only for that reason, but others.
And this here is just a normal maintenance thing, but we do flushing hydrants citywide next year.
Well, I can see on my street, the last 2 people on the dead end go to Florida. So it's probably a lot of dead water over there.
Yeah, your end of the world gets flushed as a semi-annual.
I guess to me, it would be a significant concern if there actually was no residual chlorine at those dead ends. So it might be good to do some testing when you do those to see if you actually have gotten to the point where there's no chlorine. It's a pretty simple test.
Yeah. We can do a lot of things, like I said, homeowners in the area, let us know, just start to see things come up. You know, they know there's routine, so it works out pretty good.
Good.
Any other questions? If not, let's go to the office manager's report.
Nice recovery on the collections.
Thanks.
And Joel, what's the process on that decision? You know, when we had the snow, she decided to discontinue the disconnects for a while, you know?
Sure.
How does that?
And that's not unusual that we get to that first week in April and, the weather comes into play. We made that decision early Monday morning when we got to work that we weren't going to be disconnecting. And then lo and behold, the Public Service Commission issued a memo to utilities statewide urging caution, strongly discouraging disconnects. So we just decided to wait till the weather warmed up.
Makes sense. How big a deal is this notifying tenants and landlords?
Depends how many of them request it. We've got a lot of landlords, considering the residential makeup of our town. So it could be a lot of them, could be hundreds, which would be a big deal. So we're currently checking out some ways to deal with that. That doesn't involve us having to call everybody. Remains to be seen.
What's your opinion on the likelihood? Because not only is it a landlord request, but then the tenant has to agree, right?
Correct.
So what's the?
I can't see many tenants agreeing, I guess.
Well, I know, unless it's part of that, unless it's part of their lease or something,
Correct,
right?
unless it's part of their
That says
lease.
You agreed to that, but I didn't know if it's 100% because they put it in the lease or it's 0%.
We haven't had any requests yet.
Yeah.
The law's been out there for a few weeks, but I would anticipate that changing.
Oh, and a question then on, you get into the number of credit card payments. Through Smart Hub, where are the credit card fees coming from? You know what I mean? Because Smart Hub does it without any surcharge.
The utility bears those costs.
Oh.
So I believe actually in cash flow, you'll see those costs when we get there.
Okay.
The monthly. I believe they're part of the service fees, but it's, between, right now it's trending about $1,600 to $1,800 a month.
Okay.
In total for in the office, online, and over the phone. Yeah.
Okay.
So everything.
Okay.
We made a run at the PSC to try to get these charges picked up through the various rate cases, and then we actually, when we were there last week, had a discussion offline when we were talking about grid modernization, and tried to make another run at them, and they said the only way that it was going to change is if it became a contested rate case by the utility, that the utility wanted it to go to the commission for a decision, because staff wasn't going to approve it. So they would have to go to the commission for a full decision on a rate case.
And that's part of the internal discussion we'll have when we do the water rate case. And, if we do it soon enough that we can have that time if we decide to contest that, to make that an issue, and maybe they'll accept it, maybe they won't. But that's kind of why, again, we don't want to get under the 8 ball and be at a low rate of return before we file those rate cases.
Well, I'll just make the Smart Hub payments works great, so.
It does work pretty well, doesn't it?
It works great, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, let's go to the Director of Finance report.
Just for those of you that don't know Lynn in the back row there, she is the one that was promoted to customer service manager. Been with the utility for the last 13 years as customer service rep. He's done a really good job. He's been working with Joel over the last couple weeks, kind of learning, getting a better understanding of more of the higher level things that happen here, and we'll be taking over responsibilities very soon.
Congratulations, what? When is your due retirement?
My last day showing up here will be June 28th.
Wow. That's pretty close.
In time for some summer fun.
Yeah.
Correct.
What's the return on investment for this ATC?
For ETC?
Yeah.
I believe we get right around, I think it's right between 7 and 8% typically. So it's by far our best performing investment that we do have.
There's a difference in numbers here too that I noticed. The ATC voluntary capital. $89. Okay, I guess.
You mean voluntary contributions?
Yeah.
Those are our, to help fund their construction projects. If we do not fund those capital calls, they're called voluntary contributions, then our ownership percentage is reduced each time we don't. Since it's our best performing investment, we continue to invest on a quarterly basis, basically.
And there are two levels of investment on ATC, and we can't belong to the other one because we might have had to borrow money.
We
So ours
got
is-
out of the outside the footprint investment, correct. We're basically Wisconsin and UP and anything adjoining from another state. If they go outside to invest in something like California where they own a small piece of a line there, then we're out of that now.
And we always choose to invest with them when they
Correct.
when they ask for capital.
If they start performing a lot worse, then we'll stop investing, but at this point, it makes sense.
And I would assume all utilities do, because I have not seen, typically what they'll do is, or the bylaws are written that if a utility does not choose to do the voluntary contribution, the other utilities can do the pro-rata portion, and we've not gotten that request in the last 5 years, so.
John? Any other questions? Comments?
Again, these operating expenses, these are on your bar and line charts
Okay.
for water. And I'm assuming this, again, is, why is this accelerating so much?
This year is high. I mean, we do have the costs that we had in January, February, and March in the filter plant. They had a few more cracks that came up after the beginning of the year. There was also a higher cost this year for maintenance of services. You probably noticed they spent some time down by Solaris this winter kind of chasing that leak, and that just took more cost than anticipated. So that's why even on when you look at the maintenance, water transmission distribution expenses, that's up higher, and a good chunk of that is because of that Solaris chasing it. So it's just kind of accumulation of those couple of items are what's higher year-to-year comparison.
We thought it was one leak, and it turned out to be 3, including their service line, so 4, actually.
Okay.
If not, we'll go to the Information Systems Administrator.
So Matt, what will somebody be able to see on the website?
Basically, it'll be a map, and the map is split up by zip code.
Okay.
So we got 50495, 94, and then I'm not sure what Behrens is, or Clover, but there's a little section of Clover out there too. But that's how it's split up. They're not going to be able to zoom in real far. They'll be able to see streets, but they can't see houses or anything. They can't zoom in that far. And there'll be a bubble over the outage. So it'll just be a circle over the outage area with a range of number of people out. So 100 to 500 will be a certain color. 50 to 100 is a different color. That type of thing. That'll be what it looks like.
We are receiving outage notifications every half hour.
Yes.
Bill, is that?
So with our AMI system, the meters are actually able to report an outage back to the utility. But they're not reporting directly. They report to a collector, and we read that collector every half an hour for those outage notifications. So that's what that means. We're getting those every half an hour. That's when they update.
So if there is an outage, you would see it within 30 minutes?
Correct.
Okay.
And of course, during the day and even at night, we still have the call center active at night, so we usually know before that anyway.
So outage management will merge those calls that we're getting in with the meter information to kind of better predict the size of the outage.
Right.
Any other comments or questions? If not, the Conservation Manager report.
Seemed like there were more than 9 applicants. That was the total?
Essays were long.
Huh?
The essays were long.
But there was 9. Oh, okay,
And
all
I
right.
believe in the year prior was about the same.
Okay.
Do you go and present these scholarships, or Jim goes and presents these scholarships, or?
We haven't. We have just had the school do that at the award nights, the ceremony. Now I did last week, disperse them to the counselors at the 2 schools for the students that received them. We gave them the information on it, the checks.
I think it would be pretty good PR if we could show up at the scholarship. It's usually well attended, but
Very well, because there's hundreds of scholarships, so you got 100 kids on the stage, and then you got 400 people in the audience.
It'd be a good idea. We can get a hold of them and see if it's, we can still get into that for next week.
Pardon?
I didn't know that it was an option, I guess.
Yeah, but most of them, I've done them for Encourage in the past, but most of them is up to a lot of the donors or whatever. They can decide whether they're going to give it, or then they have a de facto or whatever. And I think the high school is like the default, right? If nobody wants to give it.
Yeah,
I think it's totally open if somebody from Waterworks and Lighting wants to.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at it.
I think it would help not only our PR, but I would think it would also help in terms of future applicants. So, parents would be aware that it's there.
It's a very good scholarship, yeah.
Marketing of it. Okay.
what do you think, Scott? Good idea?
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Do you have the names of the applicants, or, the winners?
Yeah.
We haven't released them yet.
You haven't released them.
It's a surprise on that evening.
All right.
The counselors have it.
All right.
Any other questions of our conservation manager?
Thank you for following up with Swarms and Cranberry, noticing the high rates. It's good they appreciate that service.
We're in communication with him quite often.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Director of Engineering and Electric Operations report.
I meant to drive by the lean-to. How's that?
Coming along,
Yeah.
hoping to give a tour probably in a month or so when we're all
Okay.
done.
Okay.
This filter plant work with the valves and conduit, capital or expense?
Capital.
It was budgeted as part of the 2018 budget.
What's the status of our west side transformer delivery? Everything on schedule?
Yep, assigned all the approval drawings last week to keep the delivery still for June, so right now it's looking good.
How did we ever end up with that? Because at the last meeting we were talking about, we weren't sure whether, what they wouldn't bill us for the rewiring.
That's actually that's the one that failed getting rewound next year.
Right.
Still waiting for Jordan Transformers to lock down some type of quote for us before we issue anything. So
Okay.
I have your permission that I can do $250,000 if I have to, but I'm still waiting for the paperwork.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
How did you know on lean-to garage edition, which two to use? You have the TO, you could have used the TWO or the TOO.
I don't know. It probably self-corrected to whatever you're supposed to put in there.
I look at it, what is right there?
Microsoft makes the decision.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments for Todd? If not, the general manager report?
I just think that the list that was put together, the advancements right here at Waterworks and Lighting Commission are pretty phenomenal.
I would say you impressed a lot of people if you gave that report out.
Yeah.
It was given out, yes. I think overall they were very impressed on how far along some of the meetings were. Much further ahead than IOUs. A lot of them haven't even got the full AMI yet on the IOU side. So, and their customer interfaces and all that other stuff were further along as well.
Did we learn anything from others?
No. Not other communities, no.
Or the IOUs, either one?
No.
Not really anything out there that we haven't already done?
Nope. I mean, there's some new sensing switches and stuff out there, but we're gonna give them a little time to develop before we start. And right now they're ungodly expensive. We have one switch like it now serving the hospital, but they're making more and more where it'll sense power from both directions and switch speeds and everything like that. But we've already went to the point of fusing all of our single phase stuff, so it limits the amount of outages that we have if we only lose one phase. So yeah, overall it was a good meeting. They had a lot of heavy hitters from the PSC staff there, although they've all turned over again pretty much. But the lead of the electric division was there. So.
We got,
and we got to meet the new executive director.
Yeah. And then Columbus Water and Light is coming in a couple weeks to look at our SCADA system.
So others got some benchmarking.
Yeah, Columbus was at the meeting.
And is it, I mean, when I saw that, my assumption was that's the difference between having a utility that's responsive to the community as opposed to a utility that's responsive to its shareholders. Am I wrong in thinking that? I mean, if I was responsible as a shareholder, I'm not going to do anything more than I have to do, right? From an expenditure standpoint, as opposed to when I'm responsible to the community.
You're exactly right, yeah. And they're allowed higher rates of return than us at the PSC as well because of the stockholders.
Okay. Yeah, very, very impressive list.
It's the whole team effort.
It is. You guys did a nice job.
Excellent.
Municipal Electric Utility Wisconsin, they have a new executive director. Did you meet him?
I did. I met him at the meeting at the PSC. He actually was hired on the 27th or 8th and started on Monday. Or he signed his contract on Friday and then started the 30th. So he's ready to go. Seems like he'll be good. Have you got a chance to meet him yet, Sean? Or
What's that?
have you met the new guy yet?
I have not met the new guy yet.
Okay.
Soon. I've heard good things.
Yeah.
I've heard good things, but I mean, yeah.
He's in Van Cornell tomorrow when I'm up at Cornell doing that.
Is he?
roundtable,
Good.
Yeah, so I'll meet him then.
Okay. Well, let me know what you think. I think he'll do all right. Last two guys had no utility experience. That was a problem with hiring them. At least this guy has a lot of years of it. Not so much on the operations side, but on the customer-facing stuff, he's has a lot of experience.
Hearing your positive words about home makes me feel better. It gives me a little warm, fuzzy feeling.
Well, let's knock on wood. Because we need him to work.
We need him to work. He's got a good game plan in front of him, so
Yeah.
very optimistic.
All right, anything else for Jim? If not, the review of accounts payable.
I just had one question. It's not exactly related to the accounts payable, but it's related to the activity. Non-residential cross-connecting testing. Do we find issues here?
Dale, cross-connection, residential?
For most of them,
This is non-residential.
Oh, that's commercial then. Okay.
They've had some on the commercial side where we've had some small issues, and HydroCorp lets us know what they are. We'll send the guy out and talk to them, and they've been very good about fixing the problem. You know, some like industrial, they may have to wait for a month or two until they do a shutdown or something, but they've been very good as far as taking care of the issues at hand.
And residentially, we're doing our own cross connections, being our requirements.
That's nothing to do with the accounts payable, though.
Not really. It's an item we've been.
Oh, that must have been in your notes you didn't get to?
We pay HydroCorp every month, yeah.
No, it's in my notes, and I did get it.
I guess you did.
All right, accounts payable.
Tom's trying to make this a record meeting.
I helped him as much as I could.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
That's the guy that had to run out last week.
Yeah, he's making up for it this week, this month.
Ellen, are you still out there?
All right. If there's no comments or questions on the accounts payable, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. Rick and John Bergen. All in agreement, please say aye.
Be on the commission.